I couldn't believe my eyes. A white pilot dies, and the story about the plane trapped in ice that Jesus revealed will shock you. Death is not just an end, but a strange message I never imagined. If you want to uncover the hidden truth behind these mysteries, leave a comment below. I promise, this story will change the way you see the world. My name is Morgan. It was a night that began like any other. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. I had no reason to suspect that this would be the night that would forever change my life, and perhaps my understanding of everything beyond it. But I felt it. A heaviness, an unusual tiredness that seemed to creep up on me. I couldn't shake it off. It was as if my body was telling me to slow down, but I didn't listen. After dinner, I went to bed, feeling a deep exhaustion that I couldn't explain. I thought a good night's sleep would solve everything. Little did I know, that night would not just be about sleep. I remember drifting off into the darkness, my body sinking into the bed, my mind fading into quiet. And then, it happened. I was gone. Just like that. My heart stopped, and I was no longer in this world. I don't remember feeling pain, but I felt an overwhelming sense of stillness, as if time itself had frozen. There was no fear, no panic, just a profound sense of detachment from the world I had known. Then, I had this strange sensation, almost as if I was floating. I looked down, and there it was, my lifeless body lying in that bed. I was watching myself. It wasn't like a dream where I would wake up and realize it wasn't real. No, this felt different. I was fully aware, fully conscious, but completely detached from the physical world. I wasn't scared. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even confused. I just felt calm. As I hovered there, something caught my attention. A light. A bright, brilliant light that seemed to call to me. It wasn't harsh or blinding, but gentle, inviting. The more I focused on it, the more I felt an irresistible pull towards it. I didn't question it. It wasn't a light I feared. It felt like home, like it was a place I was meant to go. As I moved closer to this light, everything around me faded away. The room, the bed, the familiar faces I had known in my life, all vanished. It was just me and the light. And as I got closer, I felt something I can only describe as love, an overwhelming, pure love. There was no judgment, no conditions, just a presence of unconditional love. And then, standing there, in the midst of this light, I saw him. Jesus. I had always known the stories, had heard the teachings, but this was nothing like anything I had ever expected. He wasn't distant or removed. He wasn't cold or unapproachable. He radiated peace, and the love he exuded was so profound that it washed over me, healing parts of me I hadn't even known were broken. There he was, standing before me, with a gentle smile and eyes filled with compassion. His presence was so comforting, so peaceful, that for the first time in my life, I didn't feel any shame or guilt. And as he looked at me, I didn't feel condemned. There was no anger, no finger-pointing, no questions about why I had done what I did. Instead, he simply spoke. And in those words, I felt a weight lift off me that I didn't even realize I had been carrying. He spoke of my life, my choices, the things I had done, and the things I had left undone. And as he spoke, I understood something so deeply. It wasn't about the mistakes I had made. It wasn't about the regrets I had. It was about love. It was about grace. I was not defined by the wrongs of my past. I was loved despite them. And in that moment, it was clear that the love he had for me was the same for every single person, regardless of their flaws. Jesus didn't judge me. He didn't scold me. He didn't make me feel guilty for the things I had done or failed to do. He simply showed me that my life was more than my mistakes. He showed me that the purpose of it all was love. Love for others, love for ourselves, and, most profoundly, love from Him. He let me see myself not as the person I had been, but as the person I could become, full of grace and potential, even in my imperfection. And in that moment, as I felt the infinite peace of Jesus, something unexpected appeared before my eyes, an image that wasn't just an event, but a profound message about the world we live in. As I stood there in the light, still feeling the profound peace and love that surrounded me, something shifted. The bright warmth of Jesus' presence began to fade just slightly, and in that moment, I was shown something that will haunt me forever. A vision that wasn't just symbolic, but a reflection of the very world we live in. I saw it before me, a massive airplane, seemingly stranded in the middle of a vast, icy landscape. The plane was trapped, its wings frozen in place by the sheer coldness of the environment. But what struck me the most was not the physical state of the plane. It was the passengers inside. I saw them, sitting in their seats, unaware of the danger surrounding them. They were trapped, just like the plane, locked in a world of their own making. They were going through the motions of life, busy with distractions, preoccupied with technology and material concerns, completely unaware of the fact that they were stuck. Their faces were blank, almost lifeless. They weren't talking to each other, or even looking out the windows to see the frozen landscape outside. Instead, they were glued to their devices, their attention completely absorbed in the screens in front of them. They were scrolling, typing, and clicking. But it all seemed so empty. Their technology, the very thing that they believed was keeping them connected to the world, was failing them. As I watched, I realized that the plane wasn't just a plane. It was a symbol of our modern world, of the way we live today. The passengers represented so many people trapped in the icy grip of their own disconnected lives. We've built a society where we rely on technology for everything, for information, for entertainment, for communication. But in doing so, we've become spiritually numb. The more we depend on these external tools, the less we seem to understand the true meaning of connection, the true purpose of our existence. Technology is failing us, just like the plane that was stuck in the ice. And the passengers, unaware of the impending danger, continued to click away, unaware that the very thing they depended on was slowly crumbling beneath them. The image of the frozen plane struck me with a deep sense of urgency. The ice wasn't just physical, it was symbolic of the spiritual coldness that has taken root in the hearts of so many. The more I watched, the more I saw that the passengers weren't just passive victims of their situation. They had become dependent on the very technology that had trapped them. They were like prisoners in their own minds, shackled by the things they thought they needed. I could see it now. They weren't just stuck in a plane. They were spiritually stuck, and there was no easy way out. Jesus, standing beside me, looked at the plane and then back at me. His expression was one of deep sadness, but also understanding. He knew the plight of these passengers, these souls who had lost their way. He knew how easy it was to become consumed by the distractions of the world. The more I looked at the passengers, the more I realized how much they were like all of us. How many of us, myself included at times, have allowed ourselves to be consumed by the constant stream of information and entertainment that we surround ourselves with? How many of us have become so dependent on our devices, on the technology we've built, that we've forgotten to stop and truly look at the world around us, to connect with the people who matter, and, most importantly, to connect with the one who created us. I could feel Jesus' love reaching out to them, to all of us. His compassion was boundless. He wasn't angry at the passengers, nor was he judging them. He was simply showing me the truth. We, as a society, have become so focused on the wrong things. We've lost our way. Like the plane, we've become trapped in a cold, unfeeling world of our own making. And just like those passengers, we don't even realize how badly we need help. But then, something shifted. I could see that the plane wasn't completely beyond hope. There was still a chance for the passengers to break free from the ice, to escape the trap they had unknowingly created for themselves. Jesus, with all his love and mercy, showed me that there was always a way out. It wasn't through more technology or more distractions. It wasn't through accumulating more things or trying to find happiness in the material world. The way out, the only way out, was through him. It was through love, through true connection, through the spiritual awakening that only he could provide. As I stood there, overwhelmed by the magnitude of the vision, I realized that we have a choice. We are not doomed to remain trapped in this cold, frozen state. The passengers in the plane could still find their way to freedom. They could still recognize the emptiness of the world they had created for themselves and choose something different. They could choose to turn away from the distractions, the noise, the constant pursuit of material gain, and choose to seek something deeper, something real. They could choose to look to Jesus, to experience the love and peace he offers, and to reconnect with the world around them, with each other, with themselves, and with the divine. It was clear to me now. The world is like that plane, stuck in the ice, spiritually frozen, and unaware of the danger it's in. Technology, for all its benefits, has become a tool of distraction, a means of keeping us from facing the truth. It has become a barrier between us and the meaningful connections we need to truly live. But the good news, the message I was being shown, is that there is hope. We don't have to remain trapped. We can break free, but it requires something more than just more technology or more entertainment. It requires a shift in our hearts, a shift in our focus. It requires us to seek out real connection, real love, and a deeper understanding of who we are and why we're here. And just as I was still lost in thought about the passengers on the plane, a great change occurred. Jesus looked at me with compassion and began to share a profound truth about our world. He looked at me with compassion and a hint of sadness in his eyes, and began to speak in a way that cut through everything I thought I knew. He explained that the world, our world, had become so consumed with technology that we no longer saw the spiritual emptiness that lurked beneath the surface. People had become so dependent on their devices, their screens, their gadgets, that they no longer felt the hunger for something deeper. They were filling their lives with noise, with distractions, with the constant buzz of the digital world. But in doing so, they were missing something far more important. They were missing the connection to their own souls, to each other, and to the divine. He told me that this dependency on technology had blinded people to the truth. It wasn't that technology itself was evil. It was that people had begun to worship it, to believe that it could provide everything they needed. In their search for convenience, for instant gratification, for comfort, they had given up something far more precious: their freedom. The world had grown so accustomed to these digital crutches that they didn't realize how they were losing themselves in the process. I could feel Jesus' sorrow as he spoke. He wasn't angry. He didn't condemn anyone. But he made it clear that by surrendering their freedom for the comfort that technology provided, people had allowed themselves to be shackled, not by physical chains, but by something more subtle and more dangerous: the illusion of control, the illusion of security. People believed they were free, but they had handed over their power without even realizing it. The constant need for connection, the constant scroll through social media, the endless stream of information, all of it kept people trapped in a cycle that prevented them from finding peace, from discovering true meaning. He said that true freedom wasn't found in the latest gadget or in the next viral trend. It wasn't found in a life of convenience where everything was easy, where everything was instant. True freedom, he told me, was found in the ability to disconnect, to look inward, to find stillness, and to embrace the love and truth that only he could offer. But in order to do that, we had to let go of the things that had taken control of us. We had to stop depending on technology to define our worth and our happiness. Only then could we break free from the emptiness that was consuming us. Hearing this, I couldn't help but reflect on my own life. How often had I turned to my phone for comfort? How many times had I distracted myself with the endless pull of digital media instead of sitting quietly with my thoughts? The truth was, I had been blind too. I had been caught up in the illusion that technology could fill the void inside me, that it could give me the connection I was searching for. But Jesus showed me that what I was really seeking, what all of us were really seeking, was something far deeper, something that couldn't be found in a screen or a device. It could only be found in Him. And then, as I was still lost in my thoughts about His words, a miraculous scene began to unfold before my eyes. As I stood there, watching the passengers trapped in the plane, something incredible began to happen. Slowly, one by one, I saw a few of them stir, their eyes flickering open. It was as if they were beginning to sense the weight of the cold that surrounded them, the weight of the emptiness they had been living in. Among them was a woman, her face weary, her eyes filled with desperation. She looked around, confused at first, but then, as if something deep inside her was awakening, she began to plead. Her voice trembled as she cried out, "Please, someone help me. I can't stay here. I can't live like this anymore." It was a raw cry, one that echoed the suffering of so many in the world, the suffering of those who have been lost in the distractions of life, who have wandered too far from the light. When I saw her, I could feel her pain, and I could feel the weight of her words in my own heart. But what struck me the most was what happened next. As she called out, I saw Jesus step forward, His presence even more powerful now. He looked at her with such love, such compassion, and He spoke gently, but with a certainty that shook me to my core. "Faith," He said, "is the way out. Faith is the only thing that will bring you back to the warmth, back to the light. The coldness, the emptiness, the darkness surrounding you, it can all be melted away. But it starts with believing. Believing that there is more, that there is a way out, and that I am here to guide you." As He spoke, I watched in awe as a brilliant light began to pierce through the thick ice that had trapped the plane. It wasn't the harsh, blinding light I had imagined, but a gentle, radiant glow that seemed to cut through the darkness, slowly but surely. The ice, which had once seemed so solid and impenetrable, began to crack, then melt, as if the very warmth of His words were reaching deep into the frozen core of everything. The coldness was receding, not all at once, but in waves, like the first signs of spring pushing through the harshest winter. The light spread, touching every inch of the plane, and I could feel it. A warmth that I hadn't known in so long. A warmth that seemed to radiate not just from the outside, but from within. I could see the woman now, her face transformed. The desperation was gone, replaced by a quiet peace as she looked up at Jesus. She didn't have all the answers, and she didn't have it all figured out, but she had found something she had been missing. She had found the light. She had found faith. And in that moment, it was enough. The darkness that had surrounded her was no longer in control. The ice was melting, slowly but surely, and the warmth was returning. It was then that I realized the power of what I was witnessing. This wasn't just a vision of a woman being saved. It was a glimpse of the hope that we all have. No matter how cold or distant we feel, no matter how trapped we think we are, there is always a way out. Faith, even the smallest spark of faith, can melt the ice, can break through the barriers we've built around ourselves. And as the light broke through that frozen plain, I understood something profound. No one is ever truly beyond saving. No one is too lost, too far gone. With faith, with belief in something greater than ourselves, we can always find our way back to warmth, back to connection, and ultimately, back to the love that is always waiting for us. As I stood there, in the presence of Jesus, something profound began to unfold before me, making me realize that this journey was not just about the salvation of one person, but about something much greater, a truth I wasn't fully ready to grasp. As I stood there, still in the presence of Jesus, he began to show me something that, at first, I couldn't fully grasp. He spoke softly, almost as if he was guiding me through a truth I wasn't yet ready to see. The deception, he said, isn't something that happens all at once. It's gradual. It's not a sudden fall into darkness, but a slow drift away from the light. Those words hit me with a weight I wasn't expecting. I thought about how people, including myself, had been so caught up in the world around us, in the comforts of life, in the pursuit of success, security, and convenience. We had traded so much of what truly mattered for things that only seemed to offer satisfaction, things that were fleeting, things that, in the grand scheme of it all, were empty. Jesus continued, his voice filled with compassion but also with urgency. People aren't even aware of how far they've drifted. It doesn't start with a bold decision to turn away from God. It starts with small compromises, small choices that seem harmless at first. A little more focus on material wealth, a little more dependence on technology, a little more pursuit of comfort. It's easy to think that these things will bring peace, that they will fill the emptiness inside us. But they don't. They just slowly draw us away from the very thing we need, from the spiritual connection with God that is meant to be the foundation of everything we are. I couldn't deny it. I had been one of those people. I had let myself believe that the comforts of the world, the security of a well-paying job, the entertainment, and the distractions, all of it, would somehow make me feel fulfilled. But as I stood there, in the presence of this all-encompassing love, I realized how much I had given up in pursuit of these things. I had convinced myself that I could find peace in the fleeting pleasures of this world. But what I hadn't noticed was how I had gradually lost touch with the deeper truth, with the connection to God that had once been so central to my life. Jesus made it clear, it's not that people intend to walk away from God. It's that, little by little, they begin to rely more on worldly comforts and less on the spiritual nourishment that comes from a relationship with Him. The gradual shift might not seem significant in the moment, but over time, it leads us into spiritual darkness. We think we're doing fine, we think we've got everything under control, but the further we drift from God, the darker the path becomes. It's not a sudden plunge into despair, but a slow erosion of our souls, a fading of the light that was once so bright. And before we know it, we're lost, struggling to find our way back, unsure of how we got so far off course. As Jesus spoke, I realized that this was the great danger of our time. We had become so focused on the things of the world that we had forgotten the very thing that gives life meaning. And the more we chase after comfort, the more we find ourselves disconnected from the true source of peace and fulfillment. The gradual nature of the deception makes it all the more dangerous. It's not obvious, it's subtle, and it's leading so many people into a darkness they don't even realize they're in. But there's hope. There's always hope. Jesus showed me that no matter how far we've drifted, we can always return. We can always reconnect with the light. It's never too late. Jesus' words about the gradual drift from the light made me reflect deeply, but it wasn't until he continued to show me another aspect, a future danger I had never imagined, that I fully grasped the extent of this deception. As I stood there, still trying to process everything that Jesus had shown me, he shared something that struck me deeply, something I hadn't fully realized until that moment. He spoke about the future, about what was to come, and I could feel the weight of his words in my heart. The deception, he said, will spread, slowly but surely. Technology will be introduced gradually, piece by piece, until people are so reliant on it that they can't imagine life without it. His eyes were filled with sorrow as he continued, "At first, it will seem like a convenience, like something that will make life easier, more efficient. People won't realize that it's slowly taking control of them, but the more they trust it, the more they'll begin to trust the system over God." I could feel the truth of his words sink in. I thought about how much technology had already become a part of our lives. From the phones in our hands to the systems that run our homes, our work, and even our social lives, we were becoming increasingly dependent on it. But what Jesus was showing me was deeper than just the physical devices or the conveniences we had come to rely on. It was about the gradual shift in trust, the slow replacement of God with the systems we had created. The more people relied on technology, the more they would begin to look to it for answers, for comfort, for security. And in doing so, they would stop looking to God, who had always been the true source of those things. Jesus explained that many would be drawn into this deception, seduced by the promises of a world that was better, smarter, safer, through technology. He said that some would resist, that there would always be those who recognized the danger, who saw through the illusion and refused to give in. But he also said that many, too many, would not resist. They would be caught up in the comfort and convenience of the system, and in doing so, they would lose their connection to the divine. They would trust the system more than they trusted God. And in the end, they would find themselves trapped, not by anything physical, but by the spiritual emptiness that comes from turning away from the truth. It was a sobering realization. I thought about how easily we could fall into this trap. How many of us, myself included, had already let technology dictate so much of our lives without even realizing it? How many of us had allowed ourselves to become so comfortable with the system that we no longer felt the need to look beyond it, to search for something deeper? Jesus showed me that this was the danger, the slow, steady erosion of our reliance on Him. The more we place our trust in the systems we've built, the further we move away from the only true source of peace and hope. I could see the challenge ahead, not just for me, but for the world. It would take courage to resist, to not be swept away by the tide of technology and convenience. But I also knew that Jesus was showing me something important. There was still time. We could still make the choice to trust in Him, to reconnect with the truth that goes beyond the systems of this world. The deception might spread, but the light was always there, ready to guide us back if we were willing to see it. But just as I was struggling to understand the warnings Jesus had shared, a sudden event occurred, making everything I had seen and felt more vivid than ever before. I woke up in a hospital bed, disoriented and confused, my mind trying to catch up with what had just happened. The cold metal of the bed beneath me, the beeping of machines, the sterile smell of the room, it all felt so distant, like I was coming back from another world. But as I tried to gather my thoughts, I realized the truth. I had been dead. I had died for 16 minutes. 16 minutes where I was no longer in my body, no longer tethered to this world, and yet everything I had seen, everything I had experienced, felt more real than anything I'd ever known. The vision of that light, the warmth, the peace, it was still with me, and I couldn't shake it. I could feel a new sense of urgency rising within me. As I lay there, trying to come to terms with what had just happened, I knew I had been given something precious, something important. I had seen the truth, the reality of what was happening in the world, a truth that I couldn't ignore. The vision I had was not just for me, but for everyone. The dangers of over-reliance on technology, of letting ourselves be consumed by the comforts and distractions of the digital world, it was something I had to warn others about. I couldn't keep this to myself. I grabbed a pen and began writing, my hand trembling slightly as I poured out everything I had seen and felt. I wrote about the spiritual emptiness that comes with depending too much on technology, how it slowly pulls us away from what truly matters. I had seen it, felt it, firsthand, how people were so caught up in their devices, their constant need for connection, that they had lost sight of the deeper connections we're meant to have. I had seen people, like passengers on a plane trapped in ice, unaware of the danger they were in. They were spiritually numb, relying on technology to fill the void inside them. But it wasn't enough. It never would be. As I wrote, I couldn't help but think about how easily we had all become slaves to the systems we had created. I had been one of them too, wrapped up in the convenience, the comfort, the instant gratification. I had never stopped to question how much of myself I was losing in the process. But now, after everything I had seen, I couldn't stay silent. I had to tell people. I had to warn them that the more we trust in technology, the more we move away from the things that give us true peace, true meaning. The more we look to screens for comfort, the more we risk losing our spiritual connection to God and to each other. The message was clear. The path of over-reliance on technology might seem easy, but it's leading us into darkness, into a world that promises connection but delivers isolation, into a place where we've traded our freedom for convenience. As I wrote, I knew this was only the beginning. I had been given a second chance, a chance to speak the truth, and I couldn't waste it. I couldn't let people continue down this path without understanding the cost. There was a way out, but it required a shift in focus, a turning away from the distractions, and a return to what truly matters. As I lay there in the cold hospital room, my mind slowly realized that what I had seen was not an illusion, but a truth that I could not ignore. As I lay there in that hospital bed, the weight of what I had just experienced pressed heavily on me. I couldn't shake the feeling that everything I had seen, the plane trapped in the ice, the spiritual coldness, the passengers entranced by their devices, wasn't just some abstract vision. It was real. It was happening. And the world, in its blind rush to embrace technology, was heading down a path that would soon force people to make a choice between trusting the system or trusting God. I began to think about the developments I had seen in the world, the things I had witnessed before my near-death experience, and how they were all pointing in one direction. Neural implants, biometric systems, these were no longer distant fantasies. They were becoming a part of everyday life. People were increasingly turning to technology to solve their problems, to enhance their bodies, and even to predict their actions. Neural implants promised to make us smarter, more efficient, and more connected. Biometric systems offered security, offering us peace of mind as they tracked our every move, every heartbeat, every gesture. And while these things might sound like marvels of modern technology, I saw something deeper, something darker beneath the surface. What seemed like harmless advancements were, in reality, leading people toward a system that would demand their trust and loyalty. A system that could easily replace faith in God. Imagine it, a world where your every thought, your every action is tracked and controlled. A world where your access to resources, to relationships, even to freedom itself, depends on whether or not you conform to the system. And the most chilling part of all was that people wouldn't even realize how far they had gone until it was too late. They would think they were improving, evolving, but in reality, they would be giving up their very freedom, their very connection to God. The vision I had seen was coming into focus. The slow, gradual surrender of freedom for comfort was no longer just a warning. It was a reality in the making. And soon, the choice would no longer be subtle. It would be forced. People would be asked, or perhaps even coerced, to decide between trusting the system that promised safety, efficiency, and comfort, or holding on to a faith that promised something far greater, something deeper, something transcendent. And as much as the system would try to offer security, it would leave people hollow, disconnected, spiritually adrift. I had been given a glimpse of what was at stake, and I couldn't stay silent. I needed to warn others. The more we let technology take control of our lives, the more we risk losing the connection to the divine, the connection that gives our lives meaning and purpose. The world was headed in a direction where people would soon have to decide. Would they trust the system, or would they trust in the God who created them? It was a decision that would shape the future, and it was one I hoped people would not take lightly. So, after everything I've been through, I realize one important thing. The world is changing rapidly, and the events I'm witnessing are not dreams or illusions. Everything is happening right in front of our eyes, and soon we will face a major decision. Will we continue to believe in the technological system, or will we return to faith in God? I know this choice is not easy, but it will determine our future. Do not let yourself be swept away by false temptations, things that make us forget the true purpose of life. If you're hearing these words, I want you to know that you are not alone. We can change. We can return to God, to the true values He has given us. That's why I invite you to share this message, so more people can awaken and realize the true path we need to follow. Please leave a comment below if you feel the need to take action, like, share, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel to continue receiving these messages. God bless you, and together, we will not lose our way in this world.